I'm Jake, 34, and I've been married to Emily for 6 years. On the surface, things seemed perfect: great jobs, shared interests, and a solid social life. We even started planning to buy a house last year. But lately, things have been different. It started a few months ago. Emily became really secretive about her phone. I noticed she was texting more than usual, always stepping out to take calls in another room. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe work was just stressing her out. But then, the little things piled up. She'd come home late without a clear reason, and our once regular date nights turned into missed plans because she was too tired or had too much work. I tried to talk to her about it, bringing up how I felt things were changing between us. Instead of opening up, Emily would get defensive, accusing me of being paranoid or not trusting her. It hurt because I wasn't accusing her of anything, just expressing that I felt disconnected. Her attitude shifted. She became sharp, snapping at me over the smallest things. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells, unsure of what would set her off next. Then, there was that concert last summer. We went with a group of friends, including Mike and Sarah. Everyone had a great time, but I remember Emily seemed off that night. She was distant, barely engaging in conversations, and I caught her sneaking glances at someone across the crowd. I thought maybe I was just overthinking it, but deep down, I felt uneasy. Looking back, those were the first signs that something was seriously wrong. Little did I know, that uneasy feeling was the beginning of a nightmare I couldn't have imagined. A few weeks after that concert, things took a turn for the worse. One evening, I was at home catching up on some work when my phone buzzed with a notification. It was a text from Mike, one of our mutual friends from the concert. I hadn't heard from him in a while, so I decided to check it out. "Hey Jake, hope you're doing well. Listen, I need to talk to you about something important regarding Emily." My heart skipped a beat. Why would Mike reach out about Emily? Was everything okay? I replied, asking what was going on. Mike didn't respond right away, which only heightened my anxiety. After what felt like an eternity, he texted back. "Jake, I saw Emily at the concert last summer with someone else. They seemed pretty close, and I think you should know." At first, I thought Mike was joking or maybe confused. Emily and Mike have been friends for ages, but nothing more than that, right? I tried to brush it off, but a nagging doubt lingered. Later that night, as I was scrolling through some old photos from the concert, I noticed a picture of Emily laughing and hugging another guy I didn't recognize. The guy looked familiar, definitely not one of our friends. Feeling a mix of anger and betrayal, I decided to confront Emily. I wanted to hear her side before jumping to conclusions. When I brought it up, her reaction was everything I feared. Instead of denying it, Emily accused me of being paranoid and not trusting her. She started yelling, calling me insensitive and overreacting. "Jake, you're just trying to make something out of nothing. I was just being friendly." Her dismissive attitude only made things worse. I felt blindsided. How could she accuse me of not trusting her when there was evidence suggesting otherwise? It was clear she wasn't willing to be honest, and that realization hit me hard. After that confrontation, Emily became even more distant. She started lying about where she was and who she was with, which only fueled my suspicions. I couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible was happening, and I was stuck in this nightmare with no way out. Has anyone else had a friend reach out with something like this? How did you handle finding out through someone else? After that unsettling conversation with Mike and finding the photo of Emily with that guy, I knew I had to confront her directly. I decided to wait until she got home from work that Thursday evening. I wanted to approach this calmly, but inside, I was a whirlwind of emotions: anger, confusion, and a deep sense of betrayal. When Emily walked through the door, she seemed unusually cheerful, which only heightened my suspicions. I took a deep breath and decided to go straight to the point. "Emily, we need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She glanced at me, a hint of annoyance flashing in her eyes. "About what, Jake? I'm really busy right now." I showed her the photo on my phone, the one Mike had sent me. "I found this picture from the concert last summer. Who is this guy you were with?" Her face went cold. Instead of denying it, she sighed heavily and sat down, avoiding my gaze. "Jake, you're blowing this way out of proportion. It was nothing." "Nothing? You were holding him like you were old friends." And Mike saw you with him. Care to explain? Emily's facade started to crack. Fine, yes, we talked. But it wasn't a big deal. I was just catching up with an old coworker. He's moving back to the city, and we wanted to reconnect. I wasn't buying it. So you decided to have sex with him at that concert? Just to get back at me? Her eyes narrowed. What are you talking about? I didn't have sex with anyone. You're being paranoid again. I felt a surge of frustration. Don't lie to me, Emily. I know what I saw. Why would you do that? She slammed her hand on the table, causing the dishes to rattle. Because you never make time for me anymore. You're always working or out with your buddies. Maybe if you actually cared, I wouldn't have to seek attention elsewhere. Her words hit hard. I was stunned, not just by the accusation, but by the realization that she was using this as a way to manipulate me. So, this whole thing was just some twisted way to get back at me? You purposely got an STD to punish me? Emily burst into tears, her tough exterior finally breaking down. Yes, maybe I did. I was so sick of feeling neglected and taken for granted. You never listen to me, Jake. You never care about how I feel. I felt my world shatter. The person I thought I knew was revealing a side of herself I never saw before. Emily, this isn't the way to handle things. We need to talk to someone. See a counselor or something. She shook her head violently. I don't need a counselor. I need you to wake up and realize what you've lost. Maybe now you'll see how much I was suffering. The room was thick with tension. I wanted to reach out to her, to comfort her, but all I felt was a mix of hurt and rage. How did our relationship spiral into this? How did we go from planning a future together to this explosive confrontation? As the night wore on, we exchanged more heated words, neither of us willing to back down. By the end of it, we were both exhausted and emotionally drained. I couldn't help but wonder how things had deteriorated so rapidly and what the future held for us. After our heated argument, things didn't get any easier. Emily moved out of our bedroom the very next day, saying she needed space to think. At first, I thought maybe we could work things out, but her actions spoke louder than words. She started staying late at work more often, claiming it was to keep up with her projects, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she was avoiding me on purpose. I tried reaching out, suggesting we go to couples therapy, but she brushed it off. I don't need therapy, she snapped during one of our tense conversations. I need you to see how selfish you are. Feeling desperate, I decided to take matters into my own hands. I started looking for any evidence that could confirm or deny Mike's claims. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon something that would change everything. While cleaning out some old files on our shared computer, I found a series of deleted text messages between Emily and that guy from the concert. At first glance, they seemed innocent, just casual chats about reconnecting and reminiscing about old times. But digging deeper, I found messages late into the night, filled with flirtatious remarks and plans to meet up again. My heart sank. There was no denying it anymore. Emily had been lying to me from the start. The realization hit me hard, and I felt a mix of rage, sadness, and betrayal. How could she do this to us? To me? That evening, I decided to confront her again, armed with the undeniable proof. When she got home, I handed her the phone and pointed out the messages. Her reaction was immediate and explosive. Instead of admitting anything, she accused me of invading her privacy and acting like a stalker. You have no right to look through my messages, Jake. Maybe you're the one who's been unfaithful. She yelled, tears welling up in her eyes. I was stunned. Had I really become the monster she accused me of being? I tried to stay calm, explaining that I just needed the truth. But Emily was relentless, turning the situation around to make herself the victim. This is all your fault. If you had been a better husband, I wouldn't have had to do any of this. She sobbed, clearly spiraling out of control. Feeling more isolated than ever, I retreated to the living room, trying to process everything. The weight of her lies and the depth of her deceit were almost too much to bear. I couldn't help but wonder where we went wrong and if there was any way to salvage what was left of our marriage. Has anyone else had to confront their partner with evidence like this? How did you handle the emotional turmoil that followed? After discovering the deleted messages and Emily's explosive reaction, I felt like I was drowning. I couldn't believe she was turning this around on me, making herself the victim while I was the one being betrayed. My mind was racing, trying to piece together everything that had happened over the past few months. A week after our confrontation, I started feeling off. I wasn't sure if it was just stress or something more, but I decided to see a doctor just to be safe. After the stressful times we've been going through, I thought it might just be anxiety manifesting physically. But the doctor insisted I get tested for STDs. Given the situation, sitting in the clinic, waiting for the results felt like an eternity. My heart was pounding, every second dragging on painfully. When the nurse finally came in with the results, she looked sympathetic. "Jake, the tests show you have an STD." I felt the world stop. My mind went blank for a moment, and then everything rushed back. The concert, the suspicion, the confrontation. I couldn't believe it. Emily had not only cheated on me, but had also deliberately put my health at risk. It was a gut punch. I confronted her again that evening, trying to keep my composure. "Emily, the tests came back. I have an STD. Did you do this on purpose?" Her reaction was exactly what I feared. Instead of taking responsibility, she burst into anger. "Oh, so now it's my fault. Maybe if you hadn't been such a workaholic, I wouldn't have had to do something like this." I was beyond furious. "You did this to get back at me? You infected me on purpose because you're unhappy with our marriage?" She scoffed, clearly unremorseful. "Maybe I did. Maybe I wanted to make you feel the way I do, neglected and unappreciated. If you're so perfect, why are you acting like a victim now?" I felt a mix of rage and profound sadness. How could she be so cold and calculating? This wasn't just infidelity. It was a malicious act meant to hurt me deeply. I realized that this wasn't just a failing in our relationship. It was intentional sabotage. Determined to get through this, I decided to seek legal advice. I didn't want to jump to divorce immediately, but I knew I needed to protect myself and ensure that Emily couldn't do anything else like this. The lawyer was sympathetic but firm, explaining my options and the potential fallout. Meanwhile, I started attending therapy to cope with the emotional turmoil. It was hard opening up to a stranger, but it helped to talk through my feelings of betrayal, anger, and confusion. I began to understand that this wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about the breakdown of trust and communication in our marriage. Emily, on the other hand, seemed unbothered by everything. She continued to downplay her actions, insisting that I was overreacting. "I'm just trying to make you see how selfish you are," she would say. It hurt to hear her turn the tables like that, making me question my own sanity. One unexpected event was when our mutual friend, Sarah, reached out to me privately. She told me she had noticed Emily acting strangely even before the concert. Apparently, Emily had been hinting at wanting a divorce for months, but never had the courage to bring it up. Hearing this from someone else confirmed that Emily had been unhappy long before things started to unravel. Another twist came when Mike, the friend who initially texted me, offered to help. He said he wasn't just trying to ruin my life. He genuinely cared about my well-being. It was surprising, given how things had been, but it was a small comfort in this chaotic time. As weeks turned into months, I started to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy. Trust doesn't come back overnight, and healing from such deep wounds takes time. I focused on my work, leaned on friends for support, and continued therapy to process everything. I wanted to update you all on what's been happening since my last post. It's been a tough few weeks, and things have taken some unexpected turns. After grappling with the shock of my diagnosis and Emily's blatant disregard for my well-being, I decided it was time to take a break from everything. I took a week off work and went to stay with my brother, Alex, in a nearby town. I needed space to clear my head and figure out my next steps. While I was there, Alex encouraged me to dig deeper into what might be going on with Emily. He suggested that maybe there was more to the story than I realized. Reluctantly, I agreed. Together, we started looking into her recent activities, hoping to make sense of her behavior. One evening, Alex received a call from his college friend, Lisa, who works at a private investigation firm. When Alex mentioned my situation, Lisa offered to help pro bono. I was hesitant at first. It felt strange to investigate my own wife, but desperation pushed me to agree. A few days later, Lisa came back with information that blindsided me. Emily had been in contact with her ex-boyfriend, Brandon, for the past year. Not only that, but they had met multiple times, even traveling out of state together. It was like a punch to the gut. All this time, She had been weaving a web of lies, and I was completely oblivious. But that wasn't the most shocking part. Lisa discovered that Emily had opened a secret bank account, funneling money from our joint savings. Thousands of dollars were missing, and I had no idea. It seemed she was planning something bigger than just an affair, maybe even preparing to leave me entirely. Feeling a mix of anger and betrayal, I confronted Emily once more. This time, I was armed with undeniable evidence. When I presented her with the information, she didn't even try to deny it. "You were never supposed to find out like this," she said calmly, almost coldly. "Find out what, Emily? That you've been cheating on me? Stealing from me? Planning to disappear without a word?" She sighed, as if this was all an inconvenience to her. "Brendan and I are moving to California. I was going to tell you eventually, but with the way things have been between us, I figured it didn't matter anymore." I was speechless. "So you were just going to take our money and vanish? Did our marriage mean nothing to you?" Emily rolled her eyes. "Don't be so dramatic, Jake. We both know this marriage has been over for a long time. You're just too blind to see it." Her apathy was like a slap in the face. I couldn't comprehend how the woman I married had become so callous. "What about the STD? Did you know you were infected?" She shrugged. "Maybe." Brandon mentioned something, but I didn't think it was a big deal. I couldn't believe her nonchalant attitude. "Not a big deal? You put my health at risk. Do you even care about anyone but yourself?" Emily smirked. "Why should I? You never cared about me. This is just payback." At that moment, I realized there was nothing left to salvage. The person standing in front of me was a stranger, someone who had not only betrayed my trust but had also endangered my health and stolen from me. Feeling defeated, I told her to pack her things and leave. "I'll be contacting a lawyer. Expect to hear from them soon." She didn't argue. Instead, she gathered her belongings over the next couple of days, barely saying a word. On the day she left, she handed me an envelope. "Here. This might explain things." After she walked out, I opened the envelope to find a letter. In it, Emily detailed how she had felt trapped in our marriage, blaming me for her unhappiness. She wrote about wanting more from life and believing that Brandon was her chance at freedom. She also mentioned that she knew about an affair I supposedly had, a complete fabrication. It was clear she was trying to justify her actions by painting me as the villain. But I knew the truth, and so did those close to me. I'm still reeling from everything. Part of me feels relieved that she's gone, but another part is devastated by how it all unfolded. I never imagined my marriage would end like this, filled with lies, deceit, and betrayal. I guess the unexpected event here is discovering just how far Emily was willing to go, and how little I actually knew her. The first thing I did was reach out to the lawyer I had spoken to earlier. I needed to understand my options and protect myself legally. Scheduling the consultation felt like a daunting task, but I knew it was necessary. During our meeting, the lawyer, Rebecca, was straightforward and compassionate. She explained the divorce process, asset division, and the importance of documenting everything related to Emily's deceit. We discussed the STD situation as well, emphasizing that I might have grounds for additional claims given that Emily intentionally infected me. Rebecca advised me to gather all the evidence I had: deleted messages, bank statements showing the missing funds, the letter Emily left, and any other documentation of her infidelity and financial manipulation. She also recommended getting a medical report regarding the STD, which I promptly did. Getting diagnosed with an STD was a tough pill to swallow. I felt violated not just emotionally but physically. Rebecca assured me that I had legal grounds to seek compensation for the harm Emily caused. I started taking the necessary medications and followed up with my doctor regularly to monitor my health. The medical bills started piling up, adding another layer of stress. Rebecca helped me understand that some of these expenses could be part of the legal claims against Emily. It was a small relief amidst the chaos. Just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, I received a mysterious email. The subject line was simply, "We need to talk." At first, I ignored it, assuming it was spam. But curiosity got the better of me, and I opened it. The email was from someone named Laura, claiming to be a former colleague of Emily's. She wrote that she had information about Emily's actions that could be crucial to my case. Skeptical but intrigued, I replied, asking for more details. A few hours later, Laura responded, requesting to meet in person. Rebecca thought it was worth exploring, so we agreed to meet at a local coffee shop. When Laura arrived, she seemed nervous but determined. She revealed that Emily had confided in her about her plans to leave and her relationship with Brandon. More shockingly, Laura shared that Emily had manipulated several friends and colleagues into supporting her lies, making it seem like everything was fine in our marriage. Laura provided me with additional messages and photos that Emily had shared privately, further proving her deceit. This new evidence was a game changer. It not only strengthened my legal case, but also helped me understand the extent of Emily's manipulation. Dealing with these revelations was exhausting. On one hand, I felt empowered by the evidence and Rebecca's guidance. On the other hand, the emotional toll was immense. I struggled with feelings of anger, sadness, and even shame for not seeing the signs sooner. I started attending more therapy sessions, which helped me process my emotions and develop coping strategies. Talking to someone who wasn't biased allowed me to vent and gain perspective on the situation. In the midst of all this, Mike, the friend who initially alerted me, reached out again. He confessed that he had always suspected something was off, but didn't know how to approach me without concrete evidence. His honesty was refreshing, and I realized that not everyone was against me. Mike offered to testify about what he saw at the concert and the subsequent changes in Emily's behavior. Having his support was invaluable, and it strengthened my resolve to move forward with the legal process. With the new evidence from Laura and Mike's testimony, Rebecca and I felt confident about building a strong case against Emily. We began drafting the necessary legal documents and preparing for the inevitable court proceedings. I also started looking into rebuilding my life outside of this toxic marriage. I reached out to old friends, reconnected with hobbies I had neglected, and even considered moving to a new city for a fresh start. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating, but I knew I needed to take control of my future. As I move forward, I'm focusing on healing and rebuilding. The journey has been painful, filled with unexpected twists and turns, but I'm determined to come out stronger on the other side. It's a slow process, but with the support of this community, my friends, and professional help, I believe I can overcome this. After gathering all the evidence with Laura's help and Mike's testimony, Rebecca and I felt ready to move forward with the legal process. Filing for divorce was the first step, and honestly, it felt like lifting a huge weight off my shoulders. But little did I know, the real battle was just beginning. A few weeks after filing, I received a notice for our first court hearing. My heart raced as the date approached. I knew this was going to be a pivotal moment. Rebecca walked me through what to expect, calming my nerves as much as possible. On the day of the hearing, I arrived at the courthouse early, trying to steady my breathing. The waiting room was crowded with people dealing with their own legal struggles, which only heightened my anxiety. When my name was called, Rebecca and I stood up and made our way to the courtroom. Emily was there too, looking as composed and indifferent as ever. She greeted me with a cold nod, not even bothering to hide her contempt. It was clear she was ready to fight tooth and nail to protect herself and whatever she had managed to take from me. The judge was fair and listened attentively as Rebecca presented our case. She laid out all the evidence, deleted messages, bank statements, the letter Emily left, and the medical reports confirming the STD diagnosis. I felt a mixture of vindication and sorrow as each piece of evidence was presented, knowing how much Emily had manipulated and lied to cover her tracks. Emily's attorney tried to downplay everything, claiming that the STD was a result of a consensual encounter and that the financial discrepancies were just miscommunications. But with Laura's additional evidence and Mike's testimony, their argument started to crumble. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more intense, Sarah, our mutual friend who had reached out earlier, entered the courtroom. She sat quietly but firmly in the back, her presence a silent testament to the truth. During the proceedings, Rebecca called her to testify about Emily's strange behavior long before the concert and how Emily had hinted at wanting out of the marriage. Sarah's testimony was a game changer. She spoke about overheard conversations and instances where Emily had expressed dissatisfaction with our relationship, painting a clear picture of Emily's long-term unhappiness and deceit. It was clear that Emily had been planning her exit strategy for months, if not longer. Just as I began to feel hopeful, something unexpected happened. A man stood up from the gallery and requested to speak with the judge. It was Brandon, Emily's ex-boyfriend. My heart sank, Brandon had been out of the picture for years, or so I thought. Brandon took the stand and admitted that he and Emily had rekindled their relationship a year ago. He confessed that Emily had been manipulating him too, using him as an emotional crutch while she plotted her departure. His testimony further solidified the case against Emily, showing that she had been unfaithful and deceitful on multiple fronts. Sitting there, watching Emily maintain her facade while the truth unraveled, was emotionally exhausting. I felt a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, relief, and a deep sense of loss. The person I thought I knew so well was proving to be someone I barely recognized, someone who had orchestrated this entire collapse with calculated precision. After hours of testimony and deliberation, the judge gave a preliminary ruling. Emily was ordered to cease all communication with me and was granted temporary custody of our pets until further notice. Financial matters were to be settled in the next hearing, but Rebecca assured me that we had a strong case. Leaving the courtroom, I felt a mix of triumph and devastation. The legal battle was far from over, but taking this first step felt empowering. I knew there were still mountains to climb, both legally and emotionally, but at least now, the truth was out in the open. On the way back home, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. From the seemingly perfect marriage to the web of lies and betrayal, it was hard to fathom how quickly everything had fallen apart. I realized that rebuilding my life would require more than just legal victories. It would take time, healing, and perhaps a rediscovery of who I am outside of this shattered relationship. After our initial court appearance, Rebecca and I dove headfirst into preparing for the next phase of the divorce proceedings. The preliminary ruling was just the beginning, and I knew the real battle was yet to come. Rebecca outlined our strategy: solidify the financial claims, secure full custody arrangements, and ensure that Emily couldn't manipulate the situation further. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more complicated, another unexpected twist entered the picture. During one of my therapy sessions, my counselor, Dr. Martinez, mentioned that she had noticed inconsistencies in the timeline I provided about my work hours and Emily's whereabouts. Intrigued, I asked her to elaborate. Dr. Martinez explained that based on our conversations, there were gaps and discrepancies that didn't add up. She suggested that someone might have been helping Emily cover her tracks, possibly another affair or even a deeper conspiracy. This revelation shook me to the core. Could Emily have someone else involved? Or was someone manipulating her? Determined to uncover the truth, Rebecca and I decided to expand our investigation. We reached out to Laura, the private investigator, to see if there were any leads on Emily's possible connections beyond Brandon. Laura agreed to take on the task and promised to dig into Emily's social circles, her online activities, and any other potential relationships. A few days later, Laura called with startling news. She had discovered that Emily had been in contact with a man named Ryan for the past 6 months. Ryan wasn't just another casual acquaintance. He was a well-known figure in the local nightlife scene, often involved in organizing events and parties. More importantly, Laura found evidence suggesting that Ryan and Brandon were working together to orchestrate Emily's exit from the marriage. Armed with this new information, Rebecca and I confronted Emily once more. This time, it wasn't just about her affair with Brandon. It was about uncovering the extent of her deceit. I presented the evidence Laura had gathered, showing messages and meeting logs between Emily, Ryan, and Brandon. Emily's reaction was a mix of anger and desperation. "You have no idea what you're talking about, Jake," she spat. "Ryan and Brandon are just friends. They're helping me because they know how miserable I am in this marriage." But Rebecca wasn't buying it. She pointed out the coordinated timing of their meetings and the financial transactions that linked Ryan and Brandon to Emily's secret bank account. The pieces were falling into place, revealing a meticulously planned scheme to ruin my life. This new layer of betrayal was almost too much to bear. Not only had Emily betrayed me, but she had also involved others in her twisted plan. The realization that friends like Ryan and Brandon were part of this conspiracy left me feeling utterly helpless. I questioned every relationship, wondering who else might be complicit in her deceit. My therapy sessions became more intense as I struggled to process these revelations. Dr. Martinez helped me navigate the overwhelming emotions, anger, sadness, and a profound sense of loss. I began to understand that healing would require me to let go of the idealized image I had of my marriage and embrace the painful reality. Meanwhile, Rebecca continued to build our case with unwavering determination. One day, she called with exciting news. Laura had uncovered surveillance footage from a bar Emily frequented, showing her and Ryan together on multiple occasions during the months leading up to her departure. This evidence was crucial, as it directly contradicted Emily's claims of innocence. Additionally, Laura found financial records indicating that Ryan had been funneling money into Emily's secret account, further linking him to her elaborate plan. With this newfound evidence, our case was solidifying, painting a clear picture of Emily's calculated betrayal. With the new evidence in hand, Rebecca scheduled another court hearing. This time, the stakes were higher, and the courtroom atmosphere was tense. As we walked into the courtroom, I felt a mix of anxiety and determination. This was our chance to finally expose the truth and reclaim my life. Emily sat across the room, her expression a mask of defiance. She glanced at me briefly before turning her attention back to her attorney, who looked noticeably shaken by the mounting evidence against her. The judge welcomed us and began the proceedings. Rebecca presented the new evidence, meticulously laying out the timeline of Emily's meetings with Ryan and Brandon. She highlighted the surveillance footage and financial transactions, making it clear that this was not just a case of infidelity, but a deliberate attempt to dismantle my life. Emily's attorney tried to counter the claims, suggesting that the evidence was circumstantial and that there was no direct link proving malice. However, the overwhelming amount of corroborating evidence made it difficult for Emily's side to maintain their defense. Just when it seemed like the judge was leaning in our favor, Emily stood up, demanding to speak. The courtroom fell silent as she addressed the judge directly. "Your Honor, I have something to confess," she began, her voice shaky but resolute. "I did manipulate some things in our marriage, but it wasn't as sinister as you all think. Yes, I was unhappy, but I never intended to harm Jake. Ryan and Brandon are just friends trying to help me find my own path." The room was stunned. Emily's unexpected admission added a new layer of complexity to the case. Rebecca quickly seized the opportunity to question her further, exposing the inconsistencies in her statements and highlighting the evidence that contradicted her confession. After hours of intense deliberation, the judge issued an interim ruling. Emily was granted temporary full custody of our pets and was ordered to pay restitution for the financial discrepancies uncovered. The judge acknowledged the severity of her actions and scheduled the next hearing to finalize the divorce and fully address the financial and custody matters. Leaving the courthouse, I felt a strange mix of relief and exhaustion. The interim ruling was a significant victory, but the emotional scars were deepening. The realization that Emily had involved others in her scheme left me feeling more isolated and betrayed than ever. With the interim ruling in place, Rebecca and I focused on preparing for the final hearing. This was the moment where everything would be decided. Our divorce finalized, financial matters settled, and custody arrangements confirmed. The pressure was immense, but I felt more confident knowing we had a solid case backed by substantial evidence. Rebecca scheduled several meetings to go over the remaining details. We meticulously organized all our documentation, ensuring that every piece of evidence was in order. From the surveillance footage to the financial records, nothing was left to chance. We wanted to present a clear, undeniable picture of Emily's manipulations and deceit. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more intense, an unexpected ally stepped forward. Mark, a former colleague from my office, reached out to me. We hadn't spoken in years, but he had been aware of some of the issues in our marriage from afar. Mark had always admired Emily, and was shocked to hear about everything that had happened. He offered to testify about Emily's behavior at work and how she had been increasingly distant and secretive in the months leading up to her departure. Mark's testimony was crucial, as it provided further evidence of Emily's long-term. "I'm Jake, 34, and I've been married to Emily for 6 years. On the surface, things seemed perfect, great jobs, shared interests, and a solid social life. We even started planning to buy a house last year. But lately, things have been different. It started a few months ago. Emily became really secretive about her phone. I noticed she was texting more than usual, always stepping out to take calls in another room. At first, I brushed it off, thinking maybe work was just stressing her out. But then, the little things piled up. She'd come home late without a clear reason, and our once regular date nights turned into missed plans because she was too tired or had too much work. I tried to talk to her about it, bringing up how I felt things were changing between us. Instead of opening up, Emily would get defensive, accusing me of being paranoid or not trusting her. It hurt because I wasn't accusing her of anything, just expressing that I felt disconnected. Her attitude shifted. She became sharp, snapping at me over the smallest things. I started to feel like I was walking on eggshells, unsure of what would set her off next. Then, there was that concert last summer. We went with a group of friends, including Mike and Sarah. Everyone had a great time,